come to the laboratory diagnosis. The first step in lab diagnosis is the specimen collection. The specimen collection is depend on the nature of lesion. So coming to the different lesions and the specimens, it is put in the table. The first one, that is in suppurative lesion, we collect pus and wound swab. In respiratory infections, we collect sputum. For urinary tract infection, we collect mild stream urine. For pyrexia of unknown origin and bacteremia, we collect blood. For food poisoning, we collect feces, vomitus and food. For carriers, we collect nasal and perianal swab. That's about the specimen collection. Then come to the methods of lab diagnosis. What are the methods we used for the lab diagnosis of Staph aureus? The first one is direct smear microscopy. It is based on the gram staining. The second one is culture methods. Third one is culture smear microscopy. The fourth one is biochemical identification. It is based on the enzymes produced by the Staph aureus. Then come to the typing methods. Then antimicrobial susceptibility testing. So first come to the direct smear microscopy. As I said earlier, it is based on the gram staining. It is shown in the figure. It is gram positive cocci. Our Staph aureus is a gram positive cocci and they are arranged as grape-like clusters that we can see. Then come to the second method, that is culture methods. The culture methods includes nutrient agar slope, blood agar, McConkie agar and liquid medium and selective medium. So it includes nutrient agar slope, blood agar, McConkie agar, liquid medium and selective medium. So there is a procedure for the culture methods. This is common for all the culture methods for Staph aureus. It is the specimen is inoculated on the media and incubated overnight at 37 degrees Celsius aerobically. So these culture methods we are done in aerobic condition. First come to the nutrient agar. In nutrient agar, Staph aureus is seen as circular, smooth, convex, opaque and with golden yellow color colonies. Why these golden yellow colonies are produced? It is by the production of non-diffusible pigments such as beta-carotene by the Staph aureus. Then in anaerobic condition, in nutrient agar, what we can see. In anaerobic condition, Staph aureus is seen as small colonies with a grey color. So this is the picture showing the nutrient agar. Here we can see the golden yellow color colonies. Then come to the second one, that is nutrient agar slope. What do you mean by nutrient agar slope? It is also the nutrient agar media, but it is placed in slanting position as shown in the figure, and it provide a confluent growth for the bacteria, also more surface area for the colonization. Coming to the Staph aureus, it looks like oil paint appearance in nutrient agar slope. Then come to the third one, that is blood agar. It is for the blood agar we mainly use sheep blood and they show narrow zone of beta hemolysis around the colonies. So we can see here the narrow zone of beta hemolysis in blood agar. Then come to the McConkie agar. It produces small pink colonies due to lactose fermentation. So our Staph aureus undergoes fermentation, lactose fermentation, and produce pink color. That is shown here. Only the lactose fermenting bacteria produce pink color, other produce yellow color. Then come to the fifth one, that is liquid medium. In liquid medium, Staph aureus produce uniform turbidity. Then come to the selective media. What do you mean by selective media? It is specific for this Staph aureus. It is used to separate or differentiate Staph aureus from other bacteria in the sample. The first one is mannitol salt agar. It contains nutrient agar plus 7.5% NaCl. Also, phenol red is used as indicator. The principle of mannitol salt agar is all staphylococci can grow at 7.5% of salt, but only Staph aureus can produce yellow colored colonies due to mannitol fermentation. So we can say Staph aureus also show mannitol fermentation. So it produce yellow colored colonies in mannitol salt agar. The peculiarities is there in mannitol salt agar, the percentage of salt is used 7.5 percentage. Then come to the second one, that is salt milk agar. The third example is Luthmann's medium. In Luthmann's medium, the ingredients are lithium chloride and tellurite. This is the figure showing the mannitol salt agar and yellow colonies we can see. Then come to the third lab diagnosis method, that is culture smear microscopy. What do you mean by culture smear microscopy? It is also the gram staining method, but the specimen used here is the colonies that is formed in the culture methods is used for the culture smear microscopy. Here we can see also they are arranged in cluster. It is also a gram-positive cocci. The hanging drop reveals non-motile cocci. So we can say Staph aureus is also a non-motile cocci. The coming to the fourth one, that is biochemical test for identification. As I said earlier, it is based on the enzymes. That is Staph aureus produce catalase enzyme. So it show catalase test. So the catalase test is positive. Then the second test is oxidative fermentation test. Third test is coagulase test. Fourth is DNase test. Fifth is phosphatase test. Here the coagulase test and DNase test are specific for Staph aureus. Staph aureus only show coagulase test positive and DNase test positive. So coming to the first one I said, and the second one, that is Hugh-Lipton oxidative fermentation test. We know Staph aureus is a facultative anaerobe, so it take energy through fermentation in the absence of oxygen. So it show fermentative pattern in oxidative fermentation test. So we have to remember Staph aureus show fermentative pattern in oxidative fermentation test, whereas Micrococcus show oxidative pattern in oxidative fermentation test. That is we have to remember. Then come to the third test, that is coagulase test. It is commonly used for the identification of Staph aureus. It is also unique for Staph aureus. Here we know there is two types of coagulase test, tube coagulase test and slide coagulase test. The tube coagulase test is done in test tube and the slide coagulase test is done in clear slide, that we can see in the figure. Then come to the tube coagulase test. The tube coagulase test is used to detect free coagulase enzyme, whereas slide coagulase test is used to find bound coagulase or clumping factor that we know. Then come to the procedure of each one. The procedure of tube coagulase test. First, the colonies of the Staph aureus is emulsified in 1 ml of diluted plasma, that is in the ratio 1:6 in a test tube, and is incubated at 37 degrees Celsius in a water bath up to 4 hours. Whereas in slide coagulase test, colonies of Staph aureus is emulsified with a drop of normal saline on a clear slide to form a milky white suspension, and then add a drop of undiluted plasma and it mix it properly. So we have to say in slide coagulase test we add the specimen, normal saline, also the undiluted plasma, whereas in tube coagulase there is only two things, that is the specimen and diluted plasma in the ratio 1:6. It is the figure. There is in for tube coagulase test, clot formation is indicated as a positive test. The clot does not move or flow when we are tilting the test tube, that we can see. And in the case of slide coagulase test, what happened? There is clump formation is indicated as a positive test. Come to some properties or some features of tube coagulase test. The negative tubes are, that is the tubes in a, after 4 hours it does not show any clot. We call it as negative tubes, and they are re-incubated for overnight. For some strains produce delayed clot. Some strains produce delayed clot. So for that we wait in overnight. Then the citrate plasma is give false positive test in tube coagulase test, that is by Pseudomonas bacteria. So what we do? We use heparin or EDTA as anticoagulants. We does not use citrated plasma in tube coagulase test. Then come to the fourth biochemical test, that is DNA test. That is Staph aureus produce DNA enzyme. On DNA agar, a clear halo is produced surrounding the colonies of Staph aureus because the DNA enzyme digests the DNA and it produce a clear halo surrounding the colonies. So that's about the DNA test. It is also unique for Staph aureus. Then come to the fifth test, that is phosphatase test. In case of phosphatase test, what happen? This enzyme, it is positive for Staph aureus, Staph epidermidis and Staph silex. Then this phosphatase enzyme, it is split phenolphthalein diphosphatate into free phenolphthalein. Then what happened? It react with the ammonia vapors and in turn the colon is to pink color. We know phenolphthalein react with the ammonia vapors. What happened? It turns to pink color. So here also in phosphatase test, the Staph aureus show pink color. Then come to the fifth methods. It is typing of Staph aureus. What do you mean by typing? For what we do typing? It is done for finding of disease causing strains of Staph aureus present in the specimen. That is, we know Staph aureus have many strains, but for the identification of each strains, which strains cause the disease, to find out that we use typing. It is mainly done for epidemiological purpose to trace the source of infection, such as in case of food poisoning. We know in for the food poisoning, the enterotoxin is produce the food poison, and there is different types of enterotoxin is present. So by the typing method, we can identify which strain is produced the food poisoning, and then we can trace the source of infection also. There are mainly two types of typing methods are there. First one is phenotyping method and second one is genotyping method. Coming to the phenotyping methods, it will have bacteriophage typing and antibiogram typing. In genotyping methods, there is PCR, RFLP, that is restricted fragment length polymorphism, then ribotyping and PFG, etc. Coming to the detail about the bacteriophage typing, we know what is a bacteriophage. Bacteriophage are virus that infect and replicate within the bacteria. That is, the virus infect the bacteria is known as bacteriophage. So the principle of bacteriophage typing is the particular strains of bacteria is infected with a particular type of bacteriophage. So we can easily identify with this specificity. The phage type is designated. It is designed according to the capability of different phages to lyse the strain. Mainly, the pattern method of phage typing is commonly used. Coming to the procedure of pattern method of phage typing, the test strain is inoculated as lawn culture on the nutrient agar. The drops of routine test dose of non-set of different phages are spot inoculated. The zone of lysis will be produced in those areas where the test strain is susceptible for the phage applied. So we can find out which that is, we can see in the figure which in which column or which phage lies the strain. We can say this strain is the causative agent, causative strain. The phage type 80/81 is most commonly associated with the outbreak in hospital. So it is known as epidemic strains of Staph aureus. So when we are when we are telling about the Staph aureus, the phage type 80/81 is the strain for Staph aureus, is the phage for Staph aureus. And when come to the toxic shock syndrome toxin, it producing strains belongs to bacteriophage group 1. Epidermolytic toxin producing strains belong to bacteriophage 2. That we said earlier. There is bacteriophage group 1 and bacteriophage group 2. Also phase type 80/81. That's related to Staph aureus. Then come to the sixth method, that is antimicrobial susceptibility test. What do you mean by that? The Staph aureus develop resistance to antibiotics rapidly. So, by this test we confirm which drug is suitable or sensitive for the particular strains of Staph aureus. It is helpful for the prescription of drugs. The antimicrobial susceptibility test is done in a Mullers-Hinton agar. That's about the antimicrobial susceptibility test. Also about the lab diagnosis. Then come to the next topic, that is drug resistance of Staph aureus. There is mainly two types of resistance. The first one is resistant to beta-lactamase antibiotics and the second one is a resistance to vancomycin. Coming to the first one, resistant to beta-lactam antibiotics. This resistance is produced by two methods. That is, first one is production of beta-lactamase enzyme by the Staph aureus. Second one is by the alteration of penicillin binding proteins. Coming to the first one, that is production of beta-lactamase enzyme. The beta-lactamase enzyme is also known as penicillase enzyme. It cleaves the beta-lactam ring in antibiotics. It is produced by the Staph aureus. Then what happened? It is a plasmid coded resistance. It is transferred between the Staph aureus strains by transduction and it cleaves the beta-lactam ring. So the antibiotic cannot work on these bacteria. Borderline oxacillin resistant Staph aureus strains are produced by the hyperproduction of beta-lactamase. It is an example. BORSA is an example for the resistance produced by the production of beta-lactamase enzyme. This resistance can be overcome by addition of beta-lactamase inhibitors such as clavulanic acid and sulbactam along with the beta-lactam antibiotics. Then come to the second one, that is alteration of penicillin binding protein. How it is occur? It is a chromosomally coded resistance. There is a gene known as MECK gene which alter the penicillin binding protein to penicillin binding protein 2A. Normally, the penicillin binding protein used for the synthesis of cell wall in bacteria, but beta-lactam antibiotic inhibit the protein. Then what happened? Inhibition of cell wall synthesis occur. That is our beta-lactam antibiotic. That is mainly they are penicillin nature, so they are acting on these penicillin binding proteins and they inhibit the cell wall synthesis of bacteria, so we can destroy the bacteria. But here by the alteration what happened, it leads to the less affinity to beta-lactam drugs. So finally these strains become resistant to some beta-lactam drugs. MRSA is one example, that is methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. This MRSA can be overcome by the use of the drug, or the drug of choice for the MRSA is we cannot use beta-lactam antibiotics, so we use another class of drug that is known as the drug of choice is vancomycin. It is a glycopeptide class drug. Then come to the resistant to vancomycin. As I said earlier, there is for the MRSA we use vancomycin, but what happened? Overuse of vancomycin leads to vancomycin resistance. There is mainly two types of resistance, low grade resistance and high grade resistance. The low grade resistance is also known as vancomycin intermediate Staphylococcus aureus or VISA. It is very common and it is by how this resistance is occur. It is by increasing the thickness of cell wall. In high grade, it is also known as vancomycin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It is rare. It is by the VAN-A gene. Then the effective drugs for the resistant to vancomycins are, or vancomycin resistance is linezolid, telavancin, dabotamycin, etc. Then come to the treatment for the Staphylococcus aureus infection. There is parenteral therapy also. Oral therapy is present. First come to the parental therapy. Parental therapy for serious infection. When the strain of bacteria is sensitive to penicillin, we can give penicillin G. When the strain of bacteria is sensitive to methicillin, we can give napcillin and oxacillin. If it is resistant to methicillin, we can give vancomycin. That is the drug of choice. Also, we use some alternative drugs based on the antimicrobial susceptibility test. They are teicoplanin, daptomycin, linezolid, quinaprisin, ceftobiprole, etc. For empirical therapy, we add aminoglycosides along with the vancomycin. That is for combining effect in empirical therapy for MRSA. And in case of oral therapy for skin and soft tissue infection, what we do, if it is the strain is sensitive methicillin, we give dicloxacillin, cefalexin or cefazolin. And if the strain is resistant to methicillin, we give clindamycin and cotrimoxazole, doxycycline, and linezolid are alternative drugs. That's about the treatment of Staphylococcus aureus. We have to remember we give for the vancomycin as the drug of choice for the MRSA. Then come to the control measures. To prevent the hospital infection, we do proper hand washing is efficient. Proper cleaning of hospital environment, take early screening and treatment for the MRSA carriers among the hospital staff in the case of outbreak, that is in the case of Staph aureus infection outbreak. Also we use stoppage of antibiotic misuse in hospital. It is very common, and we use the process known as buddling, that is perform medical interventions such as catheter insertion in a sequence of prescribed steps. So we can reduce the chances or in this staphylococcus infection. To the prevention of food poisoning, we can avoid the eating of raw foods without washing. Also we can avoid the processed food, etc. Then come to the coagulase negative staphylococcus. It is also a staphylococcus species. The examples are Staphylococcus epidermidis, Staphylococcus apophyticus, Staphylococcus lucius, and Staphylococcus staphylococcus. Coming to the Staphylococcus epidermidis, it is most commonly present compared to the other coagulase negative staphylococcus. It is present in our normal flora, but it has more pathogenic, and this pathogenicity is enhanced by some prosthetic devices used in human being. Coming to the pathogenesis, how it produces the disease. It adheres to the surface of this prosthetic device by surface adhesive molecule and form an extracellular polysaccharide material on the surface of device. It is called a protective biofilm. Then what happen? These biofilm act as a barrier between this defense mechanism of the host, also this bacteria, and it is protected from the defense mechanism also from the antibiotics. That is the pathogenesis of the Staphylococcal epidermidis. It produce biofilm. It can cause endocarditis, also some ventricular shunt infection also. That is, it is mainly related to prosthetic valve. Then come to the Staphylococcus apophyticus. It is responsible for the urinary tract infection in young humans. It is differentiated from the other Staphylococcus by its resistance to novobiocin disc. It is, we have to remember, in Staphylococcus apophyticus, it is resistant to novobiocin disc. In case of Staphylococcus lucius and Staphylococcus schilfri, they are responsible for native valve endocarditis and osteomyelitis. They have more virulence factors or virulentity than other coagulase negative staphylococcus. That's about the Staphylococcus aureus and coagulase negative staphylococcus. Thank you.